Stephen Ray Hessler is 58 years old. He left a Shelby County courtroom Friday, headed to an Indiana prison for the rest of his life.
Good afternoon and welcome to True Crime Mysteries. If you're new to the channel, hello and welcome, and if you're returning, welcome back. Today we're discussing the solved cold case of a serial predator that has recently been identified, arrested, and convicted. Let's get into it. From 1982 to 1985, a small town in Shelby County, Indiana, lived under a reign of terror when a vicious masked man broke into homes at night, armed with a gun or knife, and sexually assaulted women. Shelbyville was the center of all but one of the atrocious attacks. The town is about 30 miles southeast of Indianapolis, and at the time had around 20,000 citizens. The series of crimes disturbed the town, and fear gripped the hearts of women for many years, as that mysterious assailant remained at large. Gun sales skyrocketed, and even a local hospital offered shooting lessons to the residents. Police urged women to take extra precautions, and they were told to avoid being alone, make sure to close their curtains, lock their doors and windows at night, and alter their routines, as the authorities believed that the perpetrator stalked his victims before making his move. The nightmarish spree began on the night of August 14, 1982, when a woman woke up in the middle of the night after a man entered her home through an unlocked door. He held a knife to her throat, demanding money. He took some cash from her purse, then he threatened to hurt her young daughters, who were sleeping in the next room, if she didn't comply with his orders. He forced her to put on a nightgown and then proceeded to assault her. He knew that she was a recent divorcee and told her that her ex-husband paid him to intimidate her and teach her a lesson. He also threatened that he would come back to hurt and kidnap her daughters on their way home from school if she ever thought about reporting the incident to the police. A few months later, a similar incident took place. On the night of November 1st, 1982, the assailant forced his way into a home where a mother lived with her son. They were both awakened at knife point, and the man threatened to hurt the little boy if the mother didn't comply with him. He made her put on lingerie and perform sexual acts while her son watched before sexually assaulting her. Similar to the previous incident, he told the woman that he was paid to hurt her and that he would come back if she contacted the police. On December 16, 1982, a mother and her 16-year-old daughter were assaulted. The daughter was awake when a man entered her room holding a knife. He forced her to perform sexual acts before taking her to her mother's room. He also compelled the mother to perform sexual acts and assaulted her. He boasted about committing other attacks and claimed that he was a police officer. He also tried to take pictures of the two women using their personal camera, but discovered that there wasn't any film. A couple of months later, on February 2, 1983, the suspect armed with a gun attacked a man standing outside his home and forced him inside, where his wife was waiting. He forced the couple to perform sexual acts on each other and photographed them. He told them that he was being paid to do that and stole some cash before leaving the scene. After that incident, the police feared that the suspect's behavior was escalating. They first believed that he was primarily targeting recent divorcees and women living on their own, but the last incident showed that he didn't have a problem attacking couples or breaking into homes where men were present. Over a full year after his last attack, the perpetrator struck again. On February 18, 1984, a woman was in the shower when a man forced his way into her home. The woman was completely vulnerable, and when the man took her by surprise and held her at gunpoint, he asked her if she knew anything about his other attacks and bragged that the police had arrested the wrong guy. He told her that he would leave her alone if she cooperated with him and threatened to kill her if she screamed or struggled against him. He then proceeded to assault her and took multiple photographs of her. He had told her that they had met before, and that she had served him at her job a few nights before. By saying that, he proved that he was used to stalking and keeping track of his victims' movements. He then left after stealing a small amount of cash. Then, on November 25, 1984, the assailant broke into another home. He first woke the victim's little daughter and took her to the mother's room. He held the daughter at gunpoint and used her to threaten the mother into performing sexual acts. He then assaulted the mother while her daughter watched and left after stealing some cash. He put his crime spree on hiatus until August 17, 1985, when he forced his way into a couple's home. He forced them at gunpoint to perform sexual acts on each other and demanded they give him money. The wife told him that she had a heart condition and then faked a heart attack. She aimed to get some sympathy, but unfortunately, their attacker had none. He first focused his attention on the male victim. He handcuffed him, tied him to a chair, and started to beat him mercilessly. He repeatedly hit him over and over again with the back of the gun, causing permanent brain damage and a coma that lasted for months. The victim had to get speech therapy to learn how to talk again. He currently suffers from many disabilities and is confined to a wheelchair. After leaving the husband for dead, he took the woman to the garage and sexually assaulted her. He threatened to come back and kill them if they went to the police. Little did he know that he made a fatal mistake that night, which would later lead to his arrest. Around this time, the authorities noted many similarities and links between the attacks, making them confident that they were all committed by one suspect. They knew from descriptions given by the victims that he always wore military-style boots, a chained wallet, and a ski mask. His MO involved sexually assaulting women, sometimes with an enema bottle, and he also used Vaseline in every attack. He would often tie his victims to immobilize them, and he would take or attempt to take photographs of them. And sometimes he would even have the audacity to ask his victims for a drink and would always threaten to come back if they contacted the police. He also had a pattern of stalking and observing his victims for several weeks before breaking into their homes, and he usually attacked after 9:30 p.m. and left the crime scene before 5:30 a.m. In 1985, the Indianapolis newspaper shared a facial composite of the suspect based on the victim's descriptions. And in the same article, task force detectives said the suspect was believed to be a white male, 5'9" to 6'1", 170 to 200 pounds with blue eyes, short to medium light brown or blonde hair, and that he was in his early to mid-30s. The victims also described him as muscular, so they believed he had an athletic body type. But despite all efforts, the suspect still managed to elude capture, and the authorities were unable to discover his identity. The culprit was generally very cautious and made sure never to leave behind anything that would lead to him. He always wore gloves, wiped down surfaces, and took all the items he touched or may have left DNA on with him, such as the victim's nightgowns, towels, and bed sheets. But one time, he finally got sloppy and unknowingly left DNA behind, and that was in his final attack that took place on August 17, 1985. However, the case remained unsolved for decades, and it wasn't until 2020 that it finally had a breakthrough. A detective suggested sending the DNA sample extracted from the last crime scene to a company specializing in the same sort of DNA testing used to capture the Golden State Killer in 2018. A company called Parabon Nanolabs, a company based in Virginia that specializes in genealogical DNA identification and uses it to solve cold cases. The test results led to two men of the same family. One of them was Stephen Ray Hessler, an ex-convict who spent most of the 90s in prison for sexual assault convictions in a county close to Shelby County. He served about 10 years in prison and was released 2 months before inmates were required to submit DNA samples. Investigators started watching and digging into the lives of the two men, and it didn't take long for them to eliminate the first suspect, leaving only Stephen Ray Hessler. Hessler lived in Greensburg, Indiana, and used to pay his utility bills by mail. Police used that against him as they obtained an envelope he used to send a bill payment for his water bill. They extracted DNA from the licked envelope and compared his saliva to the DNA collected back in 1985. It was a perfect match. They brought him in for questioning, and they were able to obtain a better DNA sample from the inside of Hessler's cheek, further confirming the link. In the early morning hours on August 17, 2020, exactly 35 years after the last attack in Shelby County, police entered Hessler Greenberg's home with a search warrant. They described what they found inside as a treasure trove and a gold mine full of trophies and evidence from the crime scenes. They found several photographs that he had stolen from the victims, clothing and garments the victims described him wearing during the attacks, a chained wallet, ski mask, knives, handcuffs, and zip ties. They also found 30 pairs of women's underwear, an enema water bottle, petroleum jelly, Polaroid photos of the forced sex acts, and newspaper clippings of the articles written about the attacks. Police also searched his computers and found that he'd been researching the surviving victims' names and whereabouts. He'd also downloaded a Google Earth Street View photo of one of the victims' homes in Georgia. He'd also been similarly cyberstalking the victim of his sexual assault conviction. Stephen Ray Hessler was convicted on March 3, 2022, after an 8-day trial of 2 counts of sexual assault, 6 counts of unlawful deviant conduct, and 7 counts of burglary resulting in bodily injury, 3 counts of criminal deviant conduct, and 1 count of robbery, each a Class A felony. During the trial, the prosecution called 27 witnesses. Most of them were victims who bravely testified despite having received death threats. Some witnesses were flown in from as far as Florida, Georgia, and Ohio, as well as Secret Service computer technicians from the East Coast. Brad Warland, the Shelby County prosecutor, said,
Stephen Ray Hessler is one of the most evil, cruel, sadistic predators that I've had the pleasure of prosecuting in over 30 years. He is where he needs to be. He needs to stay in jail until it's time to put him in the ground.
During the trial, the prosecutor also described Hessler as a coward sadist. He clarified that Hessler is a sadist because he loves getting pleasure from hurting other people, and a coward because he could only do it when he was armed. On April 1, 2022, Stephen Ray Hessler was sentenced to 650 years in prison, 50 years for each crime. And finally, after nearly 4 decades, Hessler's victims are at peace, knowing their assailant would spend the rest of his life behind prison, where he belongs. It is a huge relief I don't have to be afraid anymore, said the victim of the November 1, 1982 attack. She also encouraged all victims of sexual assault to always come forward. Well, that is it for this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you like this content and want to do over here, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss my next upload. And as always, if you give this video a like if you enjoyed the content, that would be much appreciated, as it is the easiest way to help the channel grow. We also have channel membership as well as Patreon if you want to get more behind the scenes content or just to support the channel. In the description box of this video, you will find links to all my socials to connect with me as well as other goodies. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.